Hey guys, Ryan Earnhardt here from CreativeSoundLab.tv. Well, today we're going to be talking about my process for learning a new microphone. And today, the Soyuz 17 FET will be our test subject. So I've been a fan of Soyuz microphones for several years now. In fact, I'm actually speaking into the 13 FET right now as a dialogue mic. Now, Soyuz for me has always been kind of equated with having a sound. Now, it's not too aggressive. It doesn't limit your options or, go too far one way or the other. It's not overly bright. It's not overly dark. In general, they've been actually very adaptable microphones. Depending on the source, they can bring out different qualities. And we're going to see today that this 17 FET is no exception. We're going to hear it on multiple sources. I'll be telling you what I'm listening for to learn the new piece of equipment, in this case, a microphone. And, we'll see that it is a very adaptable microphone. Kind of my first test for any new microphone is to stick it up over a drum kit and use it as a drum overhead. Let's check it out on Drum Overhead. Overall, very pleasantly surprised with that. I get a lot of fullness out of the drums. I don't get too much harshness out of the cymbals. Now, it's not as dark as a ribbon, but it's not overly bright either. So it's actually a very kind of mellow microphone. In general, I think the 17 capsules really do have a mid-range push to them. So maybe 1K, 2K a little bit. I don't know that that's always pleasing for drum overhead, but really the main thing I was listening for in the overheads test was actually the low end, starting at about 200 hertz on down, and also the high end, so 5K, 8K, and 10K. And I noticed that the low end, while not, overly strong, it is there. And with a little EQ, you can pull out the sound of the toms and the snare. The top end is also, it's very clear, it's very polite, but if you need it to really cut through a mix, you can definitely make it do that. So here's the same test, but with a little bit of a mixed sound, a little bit of a boost in the low end, and a little bit of boost in the highs. Yeah, so we can see that the frequencies are there to manipulate during mixing. If you want, go back, rewind it to the raw microphone test on overheads, and you'll see that, okay, this is a kind of a good starting point for a sound. And then if we need to, we can add EQ to pull out these types of things in the sound of that overhead, such as low end on snare or some of the clarity on the cymbals. Moving on next to Acoustic Guitar. This is a source that is just notoriously difficult to record. And I'm thinking maybe with the mid-range push of the 17 capsule, but the punchiness of the FET, it might actually be just the perfect solution for acoustic guitar. So for this test, I really had to focus on the use in the rest of the mix. I think the 17 FET here would be great for a guitar that you need the chords to poke through. So the natural kind of push in the mids, almost like a boost in the mids, would be great for that. It wouldn't just be a kind of a distant, quiet, kind of string noise with barely any tone at all. No, it actually would have some depth and richness to it. And speaking of that high end, I don't find it to be too brittle, which is key. That's one of the things that just drives me nuts about acoustic guitar, is trying to get enough of the tone of the instrument and the fullness without getting too much harshness out of the top end. But I found that this, it did really well. And of course, we are actually getting a little hint here into the massive low end that the 17s are known for. Ask anybody, hey, have you ever heard a 17 tube? And the first thing they say is, oh my gosh, I've never heard so much good low end. Well, here we have a FET version, and so we get the punchiness in the low end of the instrument. For acoustic guitar, it's subtle, but it's definitely there. So I'll be listening more for that in our guitar amp and bass guitar experiment. First up, let's hear it on spoken word with the voiceover artist Ryan Hips.
There was an opening, and an echo coming through it, a space so wide its edges were unclear. We were confident it was something else, the air different from what we were used to. How we got there, collective memory couldn't say. Eventually, we found a wall of old markings, some other language than the one we spoke, yet no less clear. It seemed to have a cadence, maybe sung or pounded on a drum. This became the starting point, the indication that we were truly inside something, and if we continued to stretch, we may find out what.
Okay, so that was a great little intro paragraph to one of the manuals of my guitar pedals, and I've always wanted somebody to do a dramatic reading of that. You can hear that it does have a really nice fullness to it. It's got a smooth top end. It's not too bright, so you definitely have some options here. If anything, for Ryan's voice specifically, I took a little bit of about the 300 hertz kind of area out a little bit, just to kind of soothe out some of the low mids. It also has a great proximity effect, so you can fine-tune the distance if you're a voiceover artist to kind of dial in the amount of low end that you have. And while we're on the topic of human voices, let's hear the 17 on background vocals. All these vocal tracks are going to be totally dry, and in fact, I'm going to keep in the lead vocal here, which is actually recorded with the U47 clone. And I just think it goes to show how nice this microphone pairs with other mics in the studio here. And then also how well this mic will layer on itself several times. I think this is about 8 voices here, and you can really hear how it's making just this nice, creamy layer of background vocals. Let's check it out.
But it's getting kind of steep, and my forearms are starting to burn. No, we can't hold on. And just about then, oh, what do I see? Ooh, and it's waving at me.
Okay, so I'm just blown away by the 17 on vocals. I mean, it sounded great. I think that it has a little more high end than the 17 tube. And so it makes it, I don't know, like, I guess depending on the voice, it might actually be better than the 17 tube on a case-by-case basis. The 17 FET is really kind of its own animal. It's special in its own way. So next up, let's check it out on electric guitar. Now be listening for that low end, that punchy low end, and also be listening to the mids and the amount of high end as well. Okay, so this was actually the second position that I tried. I only had to move the mic one time, and I was totally satisfied. The first time, it was a little bit off the dust cap, so it was a little bit too far from the center of the speaker. I made a simple adjustment, and that was it. You know, job done. That's the tone, because it just sounds great. Let's hear it on bass guitar. So in this test, I was really listening for how the mic performed in the lows and the low mids. And as with any piece of gear that you're learning for the first time, you really have to consider, okay, it sounds good soloed, but how will it sound when it's in the middle of a mix? So that's a bit of my process for learning new microphones. Curious to see what you thought of these tests and if you want me to try it out on anything else. So I'll be hanging out in the comments below. Talk to you soon.